Okay, welcome to the Bif Ag Show, episode 7 or 8, something like that. Today, we have the Hill family who owns H&A Farms, or a part of H&A Farms, and we're going to learn, if you tune in today, we're going to learn all about this family and how they became the farming operation they are today. And let's start with, where are we and who are you guys and what do y'all do, if y'all just want to try to answer those questions in no particular order, and maybe introduce yourselves.
I'm David Hill. I'm their father. I guess kind of an extended third generation, but Central Florida second generation through my wife. I'm married into a farm family, became a farmer in Central Florida. So we're just outside of Orlando. We've been farming. I've been farming for 40 years, with my father-in-law started with, and these guys have been farming for 15 to 20, but they grew up on the farm. So we started. I'm gonna let you guys introduce yourselves real quick, and then we'll go into the history.
Southern Hill Farms too.
Well, I'll get there.
Who are you guys?
Yeah, so I'm Michael Hill. Like my dad talked about, we've been farming around here for 3 generations. I'm a 4th-generation farmer, so is Kyle. So I guess to say it's in our blood is an understatement. Been around it whole life. Always wanted to be in agriculture in some form or fashion or another. Talked about H&A, but we all have a different role within our family's farm, which is Southern Hill Farms, which I'm sure Dad will talk about later on, but we all kind of have our own thing that we do within agriculture, kind of touch every piece. That I operate H&A Farms on a day-to-day basis, and Kyle and my dad are running their own things too. But we're mostly blueberry growers. We also grow strawberries too, but we can get into that later on.
And I'm Kyle. So my department is I help run Southern Hill with Dad, but I also do the harvesting aspect, blueberry machine harvesting, and we kind of harvest all over the country. So is that H&C? H&C harvesting. Yeah,
H&C.
H&C.
Well, that's awesome, guys. So I want to we're going to try to roll real fast here, but try to cover a lot. So the first thing I want to hear about is the history. Bring me up to speed. To how this whole operation started.
It started with my father-in-law, Billy Long. He's from the Eastern Shore of Virginia. He moved down in 1951, and years ago there was a big ag operation on Lake Apopka. It was the muck soils. We used to call it the Zelwood muck. There were roughly 15,000 acres that were drained. Lake Apopka was diked off probably in the early 30s and drained a portion of it, exposed the muck soils for ag, and there was a lot of trial and error trying to get that right for a long time back then. A lot of people failed. And in 51, my father-in-law moved down here. His uncle farmed down here, and he rented 20 acres of muck from his uncle, Uncle George. And he started with that, had a good couple of years, and started buying land.
What was those first crops?
He used to do everything, peas, and all veg crops.
Okay.
And they got into his specialty became sweet corn. He was known for sweet corn. There were varieties named after him. He was the best trialer of veg, but mainly sweet corn that I ever saw. I mean, he was nonstop. The seed guys used to bring him their varieties that they were trialing. Let him trial it because they trusted everything he did.
What made him different? Why are you saying that?
Because he didn't take anything for granted. He was not going to take anybody's word for it, whether it's good or not. He had to see it himself. Even down to germ count. He would make the seed guys. This variety he was going to get. He would make them send us every seed lot they had, and we would germ trial them, and we would tell them which seed lot we wanted. It was good. That's just how he was with that crop. Right. I mean, he was that way with all crops, but sweet corn was his baby. So anyway, he started buying land up in the 50s, ended up with 1,000 acres on Lake Apopka. He almost went under. He had a couple good years, and they started getting sporty, and he went and rented land in Immokalee and planted sweet corn. And this is probably in 53 or 4, something like that. I'm not sure the year. But right is like a couple days before harvest, there was a terrible frost, and he lost the crop, and he was hurting. But all his creditors allowed him to come back the next year and pay him off. Thank God he had a good crop up in Zellwood the following year, and he was able to do it, and so he kept going. So anyway, had 1,000 acres, growing all different kind of crops, but he settled in on sweet corn, of course, and carrots, and he did that for years. And then towards the end of when we stopped farming, the last several years, we were growing radishes as well. So I came in. I dated his daughter through high school and college, and we got married right after college. And I started working for him right out of college. And it took a few years. I worked for 1 year driving a tractor, doing nothing but driving a tractor. Next 3 years, I was managing our carrot packing house, and then I stepped out of that and started managing the farm. And we did that, and everything was great. And then we ended up. That was. I graduated in 1983 from college, so I took over the farm management about 87, 88, somewhere around that, 87 or 88, and we. It was always very political, trying to stay in business because we were under the St. John's Water Management District back then. And it was very adversarial, the ag community versus St. John's. It's not like that today, but it was then. And they were trying. St. John's, when I say they managed all the water in this area, and they wanted to essentially they wanted to make us stop farming because when it rained, you had the lake level. We were right next to the lake. We were below lake level because we used to be the bottom of the lake. When it rained, we had seepage coming through the dike at all times. And when it rained, we got all the watershed from everywhere. So irrigating was not normally our issue. Our issue was trying to get water off the farm. So we had to turn the pumps on and drain the runoff that we got into the lake, and therefore you'd get fertilizer laden water going into the lake, and then the hot topic button was phosphorus. So during the years they were trying to get us to not put phosphorus in the lake. So we, for the last from late 80s all the way through the late 90s, we in essence stopped putting phosphorus out, and we would do soil tests. Back in the day, people would, farmers would put fertilizer out kind of for insurance. We got really tight on our soil tests with the state, and for 4 or 5 years we put 0 phosphorus out. After that, the land was getting depleted of phosphorus, so we started adding in incremental measurements, just enough to get by. We're trying to survive and stay on, politically stay farming. So, but at that point, it was political science. It wasn't science. It didn't matter that we weren't putting out any phosphorus. The state, which was Southern St. John's Water Management District, wanted us gone. So, we finally said, and there's a lot more to it, but we finally said, hey, just buy us out instead of trying to regulate us out, because they were trying to regulate us out in a big way. So through a lot of negotiations, June of '98 was our last crop on the muck. It was everybody's last crop, and so we stopped farming there, and everybody picked up and went somewhere else. Most people retired. Our family was, and I was only at 37 at the time. You can't retire at 37. So we looked around for a year and found a piece of property south of Clearmont, 120 acres for sale, sandy ground, totally opposite from the muck. And it's a burnt-up, dead orange grove. So we bought that, and we started farming landscape trees just to farm something. I say we, it was my wife and I really took on that farm. And it's 120 acres. We planted 80 acres of landscape trees, and it went fine until the recession of '08. And trees were not the thing to be on during a recession. So we had 40 extra acres that were open. I wanted to get back into a food crop. When you're growing food, it's all about supply and demand. it's not about business cycles. So the recession doesn't touch a farmer when he's growing food. Oversupply touches farmers when you're growing some food. So, and I can deal with that. So we looked around. I did some research, decided I wanted to do blueberries. Michael was graduating from Auburn that year. I gave him a call, said, hey, I want to put blueberries in. He'll be graduating in a few months. I said, do you want to farm with me? He said, absolutely. So he graduated. He came down, and from the day he got back, he didn't take a month-long siesta to Mexico. He started farming. So we went on a research trip. I mean, several, and we would go around the state looking at different farms, gathering information, deciding what to do, what varieties, how to do it. And in 2010, we started putting in our irrigation, and we laid the grounds for what is now 40 acres of blueberries. It took 2 years to plant them. 40 acres of blueberries, and that was a commercial farm. At that point, and what really changed the trajectory and the direction we were going is Michael and Brooke, his wife, they wanted, they were saying, let's start a blueberry U-pig just to diversify. I was not into having people come to the farm. So I resisted for 2 years until finally I said, okay, let's try it. And so our first commercial crop was 2012, blueberries. And in 14, we started a tiny little U-pick at the same time as our commercial crop, very tiny. Put up a little barn real quick, and my wife sold blueberry lemonade that she came up with, and we'd have 20 or 30 cars at a time. And so we just started a little U-pick. It kind of grew from that. From there, it started growing kind of fast, and then people wanted, the customers loved it out there. They wanted more crops. They said, they wanted us to do more stuff, so we started putting in more things. We put in peaches on the farm a couple of years after we started the blueberries, the U-pick blueberries, and then we went from that to sunflowers. And 4 years ago, we put in strawberries. Now we got seasonal vegetables and zinnia flowers, and so it's become not year-round, but it pretty much follows the school calendar from September through June. We have a fall festival in 2 months in the fall, and then we roll right into the strawberries. We also do sunflowers all the winter as well into the spring, and then we go into blueberries, peaches, and vegetables in winter and spring. So that's where we are. It's continually growing, and it's become our focus. We've gotten totally rid of all the landscape trees, and then we brought in every inch of the 120 acres is either in production, growing, or infrastructure of the farm. So we have no more room to grow there. So and from there, when we were, I'll talk about the commercial side of how we got into the H&A farm, and then Michael can address that. But we the traditional way, and we say our first commercial crop blueberries was 2012. The traditional way was the farmer would grow the blueberries. He would be in charge of harvesting his blueberries. He would put it in his own refrigerated truck, either small or large, and you'd sign a contract with a packing house. It would be the packing house and marketer, one and the same, and you would be responsible for getting those blueberries to the packing house. We did 3 years with 2 different packers. We were not happy about the transparency. You never knew once you dropped those berries off at the packing house, you had no control. You really didn't have any information of what was happening with the market. You just got to check 30 days later, and no really questions were answered. So what kind of questions did you have? What's going on with the market? Mainly just market questions, and what is causing, with what's causing the drops in the price. What it was marketers. This was outside looking in. Our vision was that the marketers were interested in selling volumes of blueberries, not getting the best price, and so they would make contracts way in advance without looking at the supply that was coming in. Because every year the crop looks different. One year it looks great, big. Well, next year it looks small because of whatever. It could be weather, pollination, or whatever. And so that has something to do with what the price should be. But the marketers would always they want to guarantee that the crop would move, so they would extend what we thought was a low price way out front with no regard for what the supply was going to be, and that really rubbed us wrong. So
just explain like the I guess the business of a packing house and just like a brief explanation of like how it works for people who are really in ag?
I can do that, and Michael is in charge of our packing house. I'll let him address that.
Yeah, so the question is, how does a packing house work, right? So going back to it, I mean, we're farmers, right? And we're also packing and in charge of distribution and sales. So we treat every blueberry like we grew it ourselves, right? I think that's the big difference that he's talking about, is we know what it takes from a financial perspective, from a losing sleep perspective, from a labor perspective, from dealing with hailstorms and rain and all that. You put your life and soul and all your savings into a crop. That's how we treat every berry that comes through here. But packing, you basically have to pick the product, then you have to sort it. Any bad fruit that is harvested, soft fruit, overripe, underripe, you have to sort it out through technology that we have in our facility, and then you got to pack it into whatever clamshell the retailer needs. So, every different retailer versus where it's Walmart, Costco, Publix, Aldi, Kroger, they all have different pack sizes that they need, and they also have different quality specs that they need based upon the DC. So it's our job to take that fruit, put it into the pack size that it needs, and make sure it gets delivered to the retailer at the quality necessary and at the time it needs to be delivered. But there's a lot more to it, right? But that's basically what we do.
I got two questions on the packing house. When you guys were first getting the commercial operation up on the blueberries, how did you go about picking the packing house you'd work with?
It's about relationships, and we knew people and trusted people in the industry, and so that's really, to be honest, that's how we decided who we were going to with, who we knew.
Was there a lot available?
There were several available, and then some were better than others. Some were more transparent than others. There's some that were very good, and some that were that we didn't think they would end up being very good. It's funny and we talk about this a lot. If we would have been happy with who were packing and selling our crop, H&A would not be here today, because we would not have gone. We wouldn't have been fed up and said we're going to start our own packing house. And that's exactly what happened. We got fed up, started our own packing house. The difference between our packing house and our perception of what was going on in the state was that most of the people in the state, not all, but most people in the state, they were marketers. They were packers and marketers. They wanted volume. They really didn't care about the price because the price didn't affect them, because they were charging the grower. We are a grower, packer, shipper. We care about the price, not just for ourselves, but we know what it's like to be on the other side. And our whole thing was we're going to be transparent, and we're going to treat it like Michael said, we're going to treat it like they're our fruit. It's our fruit.
Well, and back then, the lack of transparency was
it was frustrating. It was very frustrating, and that's what pushed us over the edge.
Well, really, pretty much every packing house is owned by a marketing company. So if you wanted to work with a packer, you were basically putting all your eggs in one basket of a marketing company. So what we kind of sought out to do is have a grower-owned packing house that uses multiple marketers to diversify. It's like a stock portfolio, right? You want to diversify your stocks. You don't want to buy all one stock, because if something happens to that stock, you have a lot of risk. So we have a diversification of marketers that hit good spot markets, that have good contract business, that hit the West Coast, that hit the Midwest, the Northeast, over in Texas. That way we're spreading our volume out throughout the country, so we're kind of...
And for those who don't know, when you say a marketer, you're also just meaning the sales channel.
Yeah, so, big marketing names, the brands that you see, right?
When you see the clamshell, the name on the clamshell.
Right.
That's the only way a marketer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So our idea was to have multiple marketers and 100% transparency.
Okay, question on that. That sounds like an awesome, unique idea, but what does that functionally look like? Are the people, if all the packing houses are actually just marketing companies, right, or sales forces that are moving the produce, how do you go about getting multiples of these people? Were they cool with that? You can have your packing house, we'll just sell it for you?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the fruit is going to be sold, right? So it's about market share. and it's about quality, right? You have to have quality. So over time, we've built up a name of quality, right? And having very good quality in how we do things, how we work our farmers. Because quality starts in the field, right? You can't just go plant blueberries and in 2 years harvest them and expect that the quality is going to be great. It's a very long process of it's like, say, working out, right? It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be years and years of the right nutrition, the right water, the right varieties, the right way they're handled and treated and pruned and all those things. So once you build up that time, your fruit is higher demand because you have a brand.
Gotcha.
Right. But yeah, so in volume, right? So if you have the volume to be able to, if you have 500,000 pounds of fruit, you're not going to be able to split it up between multiple marketers. It's not a big enough piece of the pie. But going back to it, all the packing houses in the state were owned by the marketing company. So if you were a grower, you would have to send all your fruit to one marketer, and all your eggs were in that basket.
Oh, okay.
So this was the first true grower-owned, grower-operated packing house that used multiple marketers and worked off transparency. So when I say that, it's very easy to tell. Most growers don't know what their fruit's selling for. A marketer can tell them, oh, it's $24 a flat, but they're really getting 30, right? And pay them $24. We've never sold $1 out of all the millions and millions of pounds that we've packed, because at the end of the day, all you have is your name. I mean, that's it. And that's the reason why we got in it. That's who we are. So the price is the price. We have weekly conference calls. We have spreadsheets say this is what the price is going to be. It's always been within 15 cents a pound what it's going to be. And that's really the basis of how we started. And now we're 40% of the market share in Florida, 15% of market share in Georgia. We do a lot of other things outside of that. But
and what are y'all packing?
Blueberries mostly. We've recently gotten strawberries that we're growing ourselves.
Can you explain, the marketing company? So when someone goes into, like, let's say, like a Costco or Walmart, and they see a name on there, is that name growing it, or are they most likely getting that from a packing house?
Most likely, it's grown by someone else, and that brand is the brand that they're basically, some of them have few farms their own. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. And there's some growers that grow all their product and sell all their product. For the most part, it's a broker that is consolidating fruit from all over the world, because blueberries, typically within each region, it's a 8-week season. So if you're Publix and you want to buy blueberries, you don't want to call up a regional grower every 8 weeks and get supply from them. They want consistent supply. So marketing companies basically consolidate the volume. They're the middlemen in between the grower and the retailer.
If it's a store label, a private label that's like from a store, that was grown and the marketer printed those labels to put for that store. Normally, there's just a marketing label. Don't normally see the farm label, because farms don't have labels, but you'll see the marketer's label on there.
I heard you mention 2 years. I mean, I'm foreign to blueberries. How does the blueberry cycle work from planting all the way to harvest?
Well,
Kyle, you want to talk about?
There you go.
Life cycle
You want to talk about blueberries?
Yeah, I mean, typically the plants, they last around 10 years, and they'll live longer than that, but as new varieties come in and plants start dying out, you typically rip out the plants after 10 years. But the varieties that we're having now, the newer varieties, I mean, really after year 2 of planting, you're getting not quite full production, but you're getting very, very good production, 10,000 plus pounds to the acre, which is that's pretty much your goal for a farm, to be across the board on your farm is 10,000 pounds a acre. Everything after that, you're doing pretty well. Now, really, you want to be in 15,000 pounds a acre. So, but you plant them in pine bark beds, because the blueberries out here, they really don't like the soil, the native soil in Florida for the most part. They like a acidic soil, pH of around 4.5, 4.6, and the pine bark has the organic matter, which the blueberries really like. If you, for instance, Southern Hill Farms, it's a real sandy soil. If we just plant them in the ground, they want to grow. And if you ripped up our beds that the pine bark beds are in, and you ripped up a plant, you would see that the roots grow in the pine bark. And once you get into that sand, there's no roots. So they kind of just, they grow as big, the roots grow as big as the beds are.
Right.
But after 2 years, you're getting pretty full production. And every year, what would you say, year 4?
Year 4 to 6 is
4 to 6 is the prime blueberry plants. As long as you're growing them well, 7 through 10 are doing just fine too. But usually, they were coming out with newer and newer varieties every year. And the biggest thing now for plantings, every single planting I would say in Florida is set up for machine harvest because labor has just gotten way too expensive.
And just hard to find.
How often do you harvest like a particular blueberry?
So you'll harvest the same block, the same plant if you're machining it every 5 days or so, 5 to 6 days. If you're hand harvesting it, 3 to 4 days.
I mean, like, once you harvest, how long till you can harvest again?
Yeah, every 4 to 5 days, you're picking the same plant.
The same plant.
For several weeks.
For 7 weeks, 8 weeks.
Okay, for 8 weeks. And then after that cycle, how long until the next time it bears fruit?
Oh, the next following 11 months. Yeah.
Okay, 11 months. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Hey, what type of stuff are you guys doing? You know, speaking around the whole organic side and the what makes blueberries healthy to eat? You know, maybe go into that realm a little bit.
Well, the healthy aspect is just the blueberry. It has nothing to do with organic or conventional. That's what the blueberry is made of, and that's the antioxidants, the vitamins that are in it are what's good for you.
You have to ask God about that one.
Yeah. Do you guys feel good that you're growing a fruit that is one of the healthiest fruits out there?
Yeah, because it makes it easy to market and sell, and everybody wants. When we first got into 15 years ago, people were getting into blueberries. It was sexy to grow blueberries back then. It was a new and coming crop, and people were getting into blueberries that were not farmers; they were investors. And back then, nowadays, the blueberry market is so the price of blueberries and the supply of blueberries because of Mexico primarily. During our window, it's Mexico. There's just so many more blueberries out there, so it makes it it's not as sexy because you don't make the money that you did 20 years ago. Right. So now those guys who were just investors have pretty much gotten out of it, and now that because they couldn't you got to be a farmer to make it. Back then when you were getting good money 20 years ago, you didn't have to be the best farmer in the world. Now you've got to really be a good farmer, cut costs, expenses, and get the most you can out of every acre. So,
but it does feel good to grow blueberries that are healthy, and people really like to eat blueberries, and love them. And when you meet someone on the street or something, telling that you're a blueberry farmer, no one around here is like, oh my gosh, I've never met a blueberry farmer or a farmer at all. So it's pretty cool, especially with Southern Hill, the brand that it's made with the agritourism aspect. It's like Dad's a local celebrity. Everyone, you go out anywhere, and everyone knows who he is. And we have probably 500,000 people come to the farm every year to pick crops and enjoy the farm.
Let's go there for a second. Let's talk about how y'all got into this agritourism deal, what it is for people who have never heard of it. There's probably tons of people that live in Orlando or around Orlando and all over the nation that have never really experienced something like this. What is agritourism, and what got y'all into it?
I touched on it earlier. What got us into it was Michael and Brooke saying, "Let's do it, Little You Pick," and I was, a traditional. I'm an old school traditional farmer, which is you farm for you farm in a big way, and so when you're doing agritourism, you're farming in a small way, but and this a totally different aspect. People come to the farm. So we got into it in a way to diversify because we could tell after the first few years of commercial harvesting that the numbers were the returns were going down, the acreage was climbing up, and the competition was going up abroad, and the net return to the farmer was going to be going down in a steady trend. So we wanted to diversify it. It made sense. I guess looking back, I never saw the opportunity. Michael was telling me that, Dad, I'm telling you, it's there. And I said, okay, because I just had the old school way of thinking.
He didn't want any part of it.
Well, honestly, I mean, I think going a little bit deeper into it, when he was talking about St. John's, the political battle between the farmers and St. John's, the farming community of the muck, of our muck, everybody talks about the muck now, they think of Belglade area and all that. We had our own muck community, was portrayed to be the villain in the newspapers. I mean, Orlando Sentinel really defamed our family and other farming families that are still well known within the industry, because they didn't want us farming anymore. So, Dad was managed the whole farming operation out there, and every morning he'd wake up and people would look at him sideways when we go to football practice or baseball practice. And so he had a really bad, taste in his mouth when it comes to the public and how the public viewed farming.
Right. So he was like, you want to put this on the map, and I don't want any more exposure here.
People coming out to the farm. He said, it's never been good. It's always that. So, in his defense, that's what he dealt with and had nightmares over and all that. But it's, going back to what Kyle said, it being a celebrity now, it's a whole different deal, because you're exposing agriculture to kids that don't know what it's from, but you're also making it fun. You're making memories, what it is. I mean, you're kind of farming memories is what you're doing in this business. And it almost feels like community service, because you're opening up your farm to people that have never been able to see it before. They get to put their phones away and spend quality time together, and it's really become a place for that.
So exactly what did you do when you've all agreed you're going to do this thing? What was the first move you did? What did that look like?
A little barn.
Oh no, created a Facebook page.
Yeah.
Made a Facebook page is always first.
This was 12 or so years ago, and so again, I'm old school. The thing was, Brooke and Michael, they wanted to do the Facebook page, and I didn't know anything about Facebook, and I said, no, we're putting signs up on streets.
No, actually, the first thing was change the business name.
Yeah, that's true. We had a name back that company name from years ago, which was Lakeshore Growers, which had nothing to do with the property that we were on. So we wanted to come up with a name that said something about where we were and who we were. So we came up Southern Hill Farms, and so it worked out well. So that kind of changed our identity. But
and then what? Then you said you got the Facebook page, and then what?
And then we put signs out.
Got the signs out, and the signs were definitely the kicker.
No, signs were not the kicker. I thought they were, but they weren't. I'll never forget. They put it out there. You weren't talking to people, so I had no idea how many people were listening. So I remember the first day. We didn't have a lot of people. We had people, and I was amazed that people just showed up. And I would go, man, they knew what time to be here and everything.
And what was the agenda for that first day? What was the
blueberry
point?
You pick, and you just come park right next to the field.
How many could they get?
Blueberry muffins and blueberry lemonade, and pretty much it.
How many blueberries could you pick?
Well, yeah, as many as you could handle. And
did that rule change over time?
No.
The more they pick, the better.
Hundreds of thousands of pounds, people can pick.
No,
But if someone pulled like an F-150 up,
we would fill them up. They would fill themselves up.
We charge by the pound.
Okay.
We charge by the pound.
The difference between, I say then and now, back when we farmed on the muck and now, back then, there was this, I don't know what it was, but there was this feeling that ag was bad, especially big ag, which I never thought we were big ag, but the big ag was impersonal, and they were out for profits. Nowadays, it's, where's your food coming from? I want it local. I want to know the farmer. So our agritourism operation fits perfect into that, because the people now, they can come see the farm, which they've never seen a farm before. They can meet the farmer. They've never met a farmer before. They can ask us questions, and I'll answer them. And so it's totally different. It used to be, we were there was bad taste in my mouth. Mike was right. I felt like a bad guy because I was farming, and it didn't feel right that it was like that. Now it's where, I'm not going to say we're the American hero again, but we're the good guy again, and we relish that, and because I know what it was like when the target was on us for no reason other than political science. Yeah. So and so I appreciate it more than anybody on the planet.
I got to say, it's really a home run. I mean, because there's nothing sweeter than just getting in your truck and going to find the blueberry people, pulling up, packing up on blueberries. That's a great thing. So when you guys talk a little bit about the first time where it went from, okay, there's just a few people here, to where it was like, wow, this is kind of ramping up.
It didn't happen overnight, but it did triple for the first several years every year. But when you start with this big, little triple's not much. But you do that for 3 or 4 years, and it starts to. Then I started to see.
Well, that
the
first day
the opportunity.
Realized was when me and you were in the parking lot.
Oh my Lord, yeah. We talk about this a lot. This was a fall festival. I think it was the second year of fall festival, and back then
we started the fall festival a couple years later.
Yeah, it was. We probably started in 16 or so, and our first crop you picked was 14, and so we're working hard just to try to get the name out. And I always kind of thought, hey, if Orlando finds out about it at the same time, we won't be able to handle it. And so it was a beautiful October day, weekend. It was probably 70 degrees, blue skies. It was awesome. Well, everybody came at the same time. And so back then we were charging a price per car because we were savvy enough to do it individually. So at least we thought we weren't. So we opened at 11. And by 12:30, we had a couple of parking lots that were full. I mean, full in an hour and a half.
6, 7, 8 parking lots.
Yeah, and so and the farm was getting filled up. We were barred a lot across the street to park people in, and then it was dry, people getting stuck, and it's sandy. And so Kyle and I were out there hooking up cars with tractors, trying to pull them out and get them sorted.
Every time you pull one out, 2 more would be stuck.
This is awesome.
And so hold on. So we looked up, and we're on a dirt road. It's about a 2.5 mile road to there's a toll road, the 429, which is the main. We go around Orlando, and so we're on that. There's an interchange there, and it comes to the farm. But it's all dirt road. Nobody ever goes that way. We looked up, and it was and traffic was parked from our parking lot.
The farm's already full.
Farm's already slam full, and so parking lot. It's a 1/4 mile from the parking lot to the road, the parking lot gate, and then 2.5 to 3 miles to the 429, and it was stopped traffic all the way to the 429.
3 miles.
Stopped waiting to get on a farm that was already full, and we looked at each other going, "Oh my, what do we do?"
That was probably the most stressful moments.
I mean, that's one of those things where there is no rule book, there's no guide.
It was a great and horrible day. So we had a deputy sheriff off duty. Was there. He came out and said, "Mr. Hill, we got to get those cars off this road. You can't block the road like it's just a dirt road." We said, "It's still a county road." So they end up just trying to shuffle the cars out, and it was a fiasco. And so we had to apologize that, because those people had just got escorted kind of down the road.
What did y'all do to remedy?
We got on Facebook, and I personally wrote a long letter and apologized and told everybody that it was our fault, and we didn't see it coming. From now on, we will be ready for it, and we'll from that date on. From that moment, we started giving updates every hour about the traffic, what we projected, if we had to close the gate, when we were going to close it, and when we
put a gate out front.
There's a gate on the farm, or we would say we're going to close the farm for no more parking at that time. And so we told them, but if we close the farm for an hour, then people, as they leave, they'll make room. And if you do that over you close it. We were there for a few weekends. We had to close it for an hour and a half during peak time, and then we told people, and we put signs up by the 429 saying the farm is closed, don't come in yet, and told them to refer to the Facebook, and it worked out. Everybody understood. They got in the habit of checking things out, and so we after that. From that moment on, after that season, we devised a plan, which was great, where you buy all tickets are bought online, and you buy them for a time slot, so we can separate and don't get all the peak at one time. And it worked out well. And we limit the number of people. Now we get sold out, and we limit the number of people that are coming by design. We could sell a lot more tickets, but we don't want to do that.
Make sure it's a good experience.
We don't want to do that again.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you guys have like a fast pass like Disney World?
No, we don't. We're not Disney World.
What did you do like, is it just blueberries or what else goes on here?
We grow strawberries, blueberries, peaches, sunflowers, and now we've got Dad's back to his vegetable days, row crop days. We've got all types of veg.
My favorite stuff is vegetables, and so we got probably 25 to 30 different varieties we grow in the winter and in the spring. I'm a vegetable. I grew up growing vegetables, and that's my thing. Sweet corn especially. My favorite crop, and I've told this to everybody, my favorite is any crop that you can plant, you can grow, harvest, and then disc up and start over the next year. But when you got the two crops that we have that make it difficult are blueberries and peaches, because those once you plant those trees and bushes, they're there for 10 plus years. If you mess up personally, or if the well goes down, they don't get water, or if a hurricane comes in and trashes the field, you have to live with that and try to reestablish what you had, and it's tough.
Why do you have to? Why you can't?
Because they're year round. I mean, the trees don't go away, the bushes don't go away. Yeah. Whereas if a storm came through and if you had a hailstorm on a corn crop, it's horrible. But then you disc it up and you start over. Next year you never knew it didn't affect next year. But you have a hailstorm on a peach tree or a blueberry bush, you know it for years to come.
Or even you go out of town and your manager forgets to run the water for 3 days. During a dry spell and it's hot, you'll look at that for the rest of those blueberry plants.
Once you stress the blueberry plant out, it's years that you got to deal with.
So at Southern Hill Farms now, you can go and get all those things y'all just mentioned. Pull up and hand piggy yourself. That honestly sounds like a great day. Another question I have is, what has it done? It's amazing you guys basically cut out the middleman in this whole process. The experience got tremendously better for the customer and for you guys. There's no packing house involved.
Well, we remember we do still commercially pick blueberries and strawberries. And it's not easy to be you picking and commercially picking because there's a whole lot of operational stuff that you don't think about.
Well, the best thing about it, though, is there's no picking involved.
Yeah, but for the most part, they're harvesting it, they're taking it home. You don't have to pack it. You don't have to pay someone to sell it. You don't have to truck it.
In a perfect world, would you guys want it always to work like that?
I mean, there's only so much you can do that.
Yeah, perfect world, they pick 100% of our blueberry crop, and you don't have to do it. That would be
Well, I mean, the amount of on the commercial side of what we do. Talking about the H&A side, we're doing 40% of the volume in the entire state of Florida. We're feeding the nation. So during our window, we're shipping for all over the country as well as exporting for we're way outgrowing what the community can. We're just producing a lot of berries.
Going back, if we could circle back to what you said, it's like how, kind of like you said, like almost back then, like the media kind of, I guess, quote unquote, demonized farmers. You're kind of seeing that come back a little bit. What are people getting wrong? Because there's 50 different voices on social media these days, and it's like everyone's got an opinion about something. What would you say is the biggest thing that people are kind of getting wrong about the farming industry, sourcing, things like that?
Well, the enemies that you see is big ag, there's corporate farms, which is a huge misconception, because the majority of big ag and these huge farms are family-owned farms, like us, but it's like they love the small local guy, but they hate the big corporate guy. But in the end of the day, it's the same.
But big ag, it's like when you used to hear the term big oil. It's this big bad dinosaur that everybody hates. Big ag, this corporate thing. I'll be totally honest. Big ag is the safest ag there is, because big ag is under total scrutiny. They're under a microscope. The government is constantly inspecting them, auditing them, and the eyeballs are on way more than a small farmer. And that, so they have HR departments and food safety. They've got departments that are just designed to make sure that they follow the rules and everything is done perfectly. So big ag, to be honest, is the safest ag you can have. Now, it's not the social. It's not the cute little farm that people want to see. They're not going to meet the big ag farmer, whereas they come to our farm and they can talk to us and they get to know us and on a personal level, I mean, anytime you get to know anybody, I don't care if it's the principal you might not like the principal until you get to know him on a personal level. Then he's your friend. It's principal of the school, and so same kind of thing. They get to know the farmer. It's a pride thing that they get to know the farmer and they know where that food's coming from. And it's just nowadays with the millennials, they want everything local. They want to know all about their food, and so we're an open book. And whereas in their eyes, in the old days, Big Ag was not an open book to them, but it is. Big Ag again is an open book to the government, and they comply with everything. So Big Ag, and local stuff. It's safe. It's safe farming, and people I think are realizing that. Whereas before they just always thought that the ag community would be cutting corn. I'm not sure why, but I'm sure there were some bad actors. But ag communities are always cutting corners on. We deal with chemicals. We deal with labor, and if there's one guy that treats their workers bad, it casts a bad shadow on everybody.
People are only going to look at the negative.
That's right. And negatives make news. Positives don't normally make news.
And I think going back to it, I deal with the commercial side of the business on a day-to-day basis every day. So I have to look at it from the global market, right? And I think people, they talk out of both sides of their mouth a little bit because they want their food to be as cheap as possible, right? But they also want to buy from the small farmer, right? The truth is the reason why the small farmer is going out is because they want their food cheaper. And their food's cheaper because we are in a global market, right? So fruits and vegetables are mostly hand harvested crops, right? I mean, there's some that are done with machines, but for the most part, they're very delicate crops and they're done by hand labor. We have to pay our labor 10 times what, say, Mexico pays in a day. There is no way that the food is going to be, that a small farmer is going to make it without scale, competing with your number one cost of goods sold being labor against Mexico in a free trade arena. There's no way possible. So until people start realizing that, nothing's going to change. So, and, for the first time, we're importing more fruits and vegetables in this country than we're growing ourselves. And that's been a shift for the exactly what I'm talking about. The number one reason is labor. So,
That's exactly right, though, man. Everyone has their little vision of a small local farmer till you're like standing in Publix and you want your blueberries and you're so happy that you walk right in, that shelf is full, the blueberries are cheap, it's easy, and then, so it's very tough. But on that exact stigma, what is it about, what is it that goes into prepping all these blueberries? Like, are there actual things that you have gotten better at from the scrutiny from the government and from the people y'all been in the business now for, many, many years. Is there things you're doing better that maybe you were doing worse off back in the day? I know that's a hard question to maybe answer, but.
Well, I would just say that going back to what, I was talking about how the reason why we opened up far to public, again, I talk on the commercial side, and commercial scale is margins are tighter. We cannot overspend, I think, but more than anything right now, talking about what Kyle was talking about, what he does is anything that we are planting moving forward when it comes to blueberries, and anything that we are working on from a breeding perspective is machine harvested fruit for the fresh market. So there's two different markets. You have a fresh market, which is what you see at the grocery store in the clamshells next to your strawberries and blackberries, raspberries, and grapes, right? It's in that shelf that you're used to walking over and see your berry section. And then you have your frozen market, which is what you see in the frozen aisle, which you'll see 5-pound bag frozen blueberries. Those markets are two completely separate markets. One, its fresh market is much higher priced fruit, and it's never frozen, right? It's fresh. Frozen market, those might have been harvested 10, 12 months ago, right? And there's a giant coolers full of them, and it's more of like a commodity crop sold out of a grain bin. For in the past, all machine harvested was typically done for the frozen market. Basically, at the end of the crop, cycle. The quality wasn't there. You'd go through with machines and just get the rest of it off. Now we are breeding and basically looking for characteristics that makes the fruit firmer, that makes the blue fruit fall off the bush easier, the green fruit hold on, so that we can harvest with the machine and still sell it for fresh. We're trying to cut out that labor, right? Because going back to what I said before, we're paying 10x our competition. There's no way we're staying in the game continuously paying 10x. When 35% of your cost of goods sold is labor and you're paying 10 times your competitor, you better get out of the way or they're going to run you over. But now we've got varieties that we can do. We can actually do it cheaper than other countries with a machine. So now the playing field is more level.
Yeah, and to put perspective, to pick by hand, we use a contractor, it costs $1.45 a pound using an H2A contractor. Per pound of blueberries to pick, which is crazy. To pay a machine harvest contractor, it's about 35 cents a pound to pick. And the difference is very, very, if the plants are trained right varieties, the difference between hand pick and machine pick is very, very small.
Has become very, very small.
Right.
That's amazing.
In terms of yield, actual yield and what you get out, pack out. So that,
And quality.
yeah, and quality.
Honestly, sometimes quality is better with a machine harvest because when fruit is hand harvested, it's manipulated by hand.
So do I need to not wash my blueberries anymore?
No,
Right.
there's still most of it's going to be hand picked because the varieties haven't been replanted yet.
It's coming.
We're looking 10 years down the road because you can't just rip out all your cash flowing bushes. I mean, your cash generating bushes and replant because you won't have any cash flows. So you have to do it over time.
Ideally, you do 10% of your farm every year. So therefore, you always have new coming in and fully mature and then older going out. So you can stay in business.
Let's talk equipment. What type of equipment is involved in farming blueberries? And as we spoke earlier, the people of this podcast know we're a John Deere dealer group. We don't have to be biased and Deere in this conversation. We really want to just get some real talk about
Well, I mean, every tractor we own on the farm, I believe, is John Deere.
Most everything. And the, with blueberries, there's certain things that you need. You don't need a big 300 horse tractor to plow and rip ground. Once you get it established, then you don't mess with it anymore. So what you need are skinny tractors, skinny cab tractors that you can get in between the ruts. So that's one thing. To me, it's just the size of the tractor. It's got to be extra narrow. You've got specialized sprayers, and we've got specialized harvesters. Those are the things that we really need for to grow blueberries.
Most tractors we run are 5075 GM.
Gotcha. Is there any sort of smart technology you guys have applied to the farm that's helped out?
Yeah, I mean we're running soil moisture probes in all of our farm, EC meters.
Break that down a little bit. That was real high level.
Yeah, so we basically have a dashboard that we can see all of our blocks and varieties and age of blocks and whatnot, and what the moisture content of those blocks are, as well as the EC meters that are testing electric conductivity, which is going to be testing how much salts that we have in the soil. Salt is fertilizer. So we can see the levels that we need to be at. So if we get a big rain that we drop below 1 on an EC, that we know we need to give fertilizer. Or if we're putting out too much fertilizer, it's telling us, hey, you don't need to use any more fertilizer. The plant has what it needs.
What are you using to gauge that?
With their probes that are planted in the ground with basically a beacon that's sending to our main station and is transmitting all that data back.
How many probes per area, just so we can get an understanding?
We normally have one for every 10 acres.
Really? Yeah. And this probe can tell you how much fertilizer is near a given point?
Well, it's no. It's just that probe is that one spot.
Area.
Yeah,
But you treat everything the same, so you assume it's the same.
So you assume everything around that probe is the same.
Yeah, you can't micromanage a tiny little bit. You've got to do it across.
It's getting the same. What 15 rows next to it is getting the same.
Now it's not going to tell you, how much NPK you have. It's going to tell you how much salts, which is the level of fertilizer you've got.
So it's general, but it's definitely help.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, to a farmer who knows how to read that, it's everything. Yeah. We've got weather stations on the farm as well, which we can establish how much rain you've had. But the main thing we use it for is for frost and freeze protection. We've got back in the old days before we had weather stations on our farm. We first started. I would hang a thermometer on a cold night. We've got on a cold night with frost and freeze. You will turn the overhead water on to inhibit frost. And when it's freezing, to a point, it'll keep it warmer. But then when it starts to freeze, the ice actually keeps the plant safe, keeps the berries safe. So, what I used to do was hang a thermometer on a bush, park my car next to it, and sleep in my truck. Park my truck next to it, sleep in my truck, and every 30 minutes I would set my alarm and I would look at the thermometer. Nowadays we've got weather stations in the fields that will tell. We put them in our coldest spots, and it will tell us what the dry bulb, wet bulb, which is, we're not going to go into too much of that, but it's ambient temperature dry bulb, and so barometric pressure, dew point, all that kind of stuff, so we can decide when. And we're looking at that with our app on the phone from anywhere we want to be, and it can tell us,
when we absolutely take it down. We always go out there and look as well, but it tells us when to go look, when the levels are, when the temperature drops low enough, or whatever we're measuring is dropping low enough to be on the alert, and then right there.
So that way we're not wasting water.
We don't waste water.
We're not turning water. We're not turning water on just to be safe. We're turning it on when it needs to be turned.
A lazy farmer would turn it on when it's somewhat close to bad. We don't do that. We take it down to the very. I'll be at 6:30 in the morning. I've been out there with a flashlight to see if frost is forming, and trying to make it the whole night without turning the water on. So
it's amazing.
And we've got our probes in different spots. We know our low spots on the farm. So the crazy thing is, our Southern Hill, it'll be in our low spots. It'll be 10 degrees colder in that spot than it is outside in the field sometimes,
which is 100
yards away. 10 degrees colder.
Weird.
It's great. Even tonight it was 33 degrees. Last night it was 33 degrees this morning in the cold spot, and it was like 40 degrees in the other spots.
Well, we got just a little more time. Let's talk about some more of the current event pressing issues in the ag industry from y'all's take, if y'all want to go there for a second. Now we're on the mics. Is there anything y'all want to air out that the ag community should hear more about that maybe we're not aware of, or the people of the state and country aren't aware of?
Well, to me, I've had to get involved in politics the last couple of years. So with me and and ag in general, it's trade. The trade specifically with I'm honed in on blueberries, specifically Mexican trade, because they're in our window. As Mike was saying, their labor is 10 times cheaper than ours. Plus, they don't have an EPA. They don't have all these government agencies that micromanage what they do. And all that being micromanaged is okay, because accountability is everything. But they don't have that accountability, and therefore they can grow it cheaper. Accountability has costs, and so until the federal government recognizes that these specialty crops, especially in the Southeast, are up against some kind of competition, that it's unfair because of the costs associated, and those costs are government mandated. We have certain labor costs that we have a choice but to pay a very high wage, and all the stuff that we have to regulatory wise abide by. It makes it very difficult. So, and I always tell everybody, it's the worst thing about this trade issue with us. It has pitted the Southeast specialty crop growers against the Midwest farmers, because the Midwest, those guys grow corn and soybeans, stuff that Mexico doesn't grow, and they import a lot of corn and soybeans into Mexico. So, and they're not shipping corn and soybeans into the country. So therefore, if we have a dispute in Mexico about our stuff, and we start rattling cages and say we're going to make changes, then the Mexican government points a gun barrel at the Midwest growers and said, if this happens, we're taking revenge on you guys. So now those guys are actively lobbying. The Midwest guys are lobbying against us with our disputes with Mexico. That, to me, in a nutshell, is the worst possible scenario for the Southeast, especially crop growers, because not only we're having a tough time economically with it, now politically we're going against our own farmers in our own country.
That is very interesting stuff. You know, one guy I think even commented on our last video and said something like, somewhere in one of our deals, he said, "Why don't y'all just move to Mexico and farm there?" And I know it's kind of an outlandish statement, but there is like a little bit of interest there for me. Is like, and I think the American people should hear this. Is that an option for farms in America, the Southeast? Is like take your whole operation and move it to Mexico?
Well, there are guys that are doing that.
And how do you feel about that?
Would you fall under the same U.S. regulations if you were to move your operation to Mexico, or would you fall under Mexico's regulations as far as like food coming in?
Growing wise, as far as I know, you'd be under what Mexico dictates.
Yeah, but the marketers? You got, if you use certain marketers, you got to use their standards of food safety and stuff like that.
If you guys aren't old enough to remember OPEC and the oil in the 70s, when the Saudis and all those guys who controlled all the oil, when they decided to turn the valve off, the United States fell to its knees. They were begging for oil. Don't you think the same thing's going to happen with food? If we don't have control over our food, we're done.
Yeah, just think if something, the conflict were to happen and there were no American farms, and people just stopped sending food to our country.
So what do we need?
You let people get cold, and they get angry. You let people get hungry, and they'll kill you.
What do we need in America to start getting more of that competitive advantage that it seems like we're lacking?
So this is I've been listening about trade since I was in diapers. Literally. Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. Yeah. It's not going to change because of exactly what he talked about. The Midwest farmers are outnumber us 100 to 1 when it comes to acres and lobbyists and everything else. And trade is good for grain. And I support that. Like, if I was a Midwestern farmer, I wouldn't be talking like this, right? Or he wouldn't be talking like this if that's what he grew. So, and because Mexico has that advantage over us, nothing's going to change. It's not, in my opinion, right? I know that sounds pessimistic, but I guess I'm tired of talking about the same thing. The definition of insanity is trying to do the same thing over and over again with a different result. So I came up with this thought of, why don't we incentivize? So there's 9 buyers of produce in the U.S., okay? There's all your big retailers are buying 85% of all produce. You got it's Costco, it's Walmart, it's Kroger, it's Aldi, it's Publix, it's those buyers that are buying 85%. All the time I hear people say, buy U.S. product. If you see imported product at your grocery store, don't buy it. Well, actually, that's the worst thing you can do, because all it does is that reduces demand. Because if you don't buy it, it just is going to sit there longer on the shelf. And the people who have the decision-making abilities that are buying this product is not the consumer. It is the retail buyer. So why don't we incentivize them just like we incentivize, I'm going to use an example for solar, right? We put a tax incentive for you to put solar in, because we're trying to reduce power and use solar energy for everything, for green, right? Well, why can't we put some kind of tax incentive? And I know that it might not be the best thought, but it is a thought, to the buyers and say, listen, if you buy American product first, you can still buy anything imported because you're going to have a total supply to buy from. But if you're buying American product, let's say $30 a flat, and you're buying Mexican product $20 a flat, whatever the delta difference is, so you're creating the 2-tiered market, and you're going to want to buy all that American product first, and you're going to want to make a delta difference. Say it's 30 to 20, it's $10 a flat. some kind of percentage of a tax incentive that goes towards them on the delta difference only, right? That way they're incentivized to buy American product first, and they're going to buy all the American product first. And if it's not enough, they're going to go out and buy the Mexican product or the Peruvian product or Chilean product, whatever country is in the market. It's still free trade. Yep. But we are putting our money where it counts, and we're investing into the American farmer by not touching trade.
And the way that trickles down is exactly, American farms. You guys, I mean, we walked through here today. You're employing tons of people. You're American family farm. And everybody wants to talk about what about America. That is exactly what happens. You guys get to grow. You get to do business, give jobs out, make great products. I'm with it, man.
So that's great. Anyways, it's just a way to not worry about going to pitting ourselves against the Midwestern farmer, which is our brothers in arms, so to speak. Yeah. And that's what's happening.
And this actually just came up recently. It was about one thing that I've seen is lacking, is especially as we're entering into another election year. There's this commonality that not a lot of presidents really never talk about the food supply. And do you think that's kind of like a lobbying thing, or it's just not a priority?
Well, of course, it's a topic that they don't want to get involved in if they don't have to.
I think it's kind of when you talk about, unless they're going to do something about, for instance, the Mexican trade deal with us. I mean, unless it's going to end well for us, they don't want to talk about it. And that tells me if they don't want to talk about it, it's not going to end well for us. I'm in an organization that's countrywide, and this was, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, and it was the last meeting of the week, and I was moderating it, and so it was kind of open mic, and so somebody was talking. One guy got up, and he was a Midwest guy, and he started talking about. I can't remember exactly what he said, but he was saying that we need to get behind X legislation, whatever the legislation was, because it was backing the Midwest farmers, and it just makes common sense to do that. And so when he was done, I said, hold on a minute. I've got to make a comment. I said, I got the mic and it's my turn. I said, and I told them what I just told you about now it's us against them and the pressures we were under. And he sat there and he says, I had no idea. I never even thought of that. I said, well, we think about it every day. So the guys in the Midwest, I don't know if they're schooled on it now or not, because they're not living it. But if they would live it if the Mexico started to take it out on them, and that's the problem. That's the worry about from the federal administration is worried about that.
Just to get a bit more clarity here, is what's happening is like, could you guys actually produce more, but you can't because they're buying, because these 9 buyers are just buying Mexican?
Well, it's suppressing the sales price, because when I got into this in 2011, Mexico was producing less than 1 million pounds a year of blueberries. Now, this year, they'll produce 150 million pounds. They went from 1 million to 150 million in 14 years or 13 years.
And so basically what it's doing is it's, because someone would hear that and might think, oh, they're just getting greedy. But what's actually happening is it's slowly, you feel the pressure of it inching you out of the market.
The law of supply and demand is stronger than the law of gravity. And if there's too much, there will be a low price.
They can produce it cheaper than we can, then they can sell it for cheaper.
Right. That's why I was saying is the focus is now on machine harvesting, because then we can probably produce it cheaper than they can. The problem is it's taking growers out along the way that aren't willing to reinvest into a machine harvesting variety
because it's expensive.
Or machine
operations are the
That's why we talked about the small farmers getting squeezed out. But if you were to put something in place like I talked about, and you could get a 2-tiered market, and the people who actually cared about the smaller farmer or any American farmer could choose to buy the higher product, or they could buy the lower product.
What percentage of their competitive advantage in Mexico is labor?
So 35% of our cost of goods sold is harvest labor only. Not labor to grow the crop all year long, not labor to
That's literally picking it up.
That's just the day that they come to harvest the fruit. It's 35% of the gross sales price goes to that labor.
So the day that you're able to drive that, let's just talk 20 years in the future, you're able to drive that cost way down with obviously what's coming is smart tractors, smart harvest, all those things. What does that now look like against Mexico?
So it's
got to be much sooner than 20 years, or we won't be.
It's cheap. It's cheaper than them.
Yeah,
their labor is going up. I mean, Mexico is probably one of the fastest growing countries out there because of their proximity to the U.S., because of all the things that they're growing and manufacturing for the U.S. So labor is in their population growing, but at the same time, their middle class is growing, which is their working class, which is their labor force, is diminishing. So their labor is increasing at 30% annually, year over year. But still, it's like what you talked about before. If you triple nothing, it's not much still. So it's going to continue to grow, but it's still so much lower than ours. But we will be able to do it cheaper than them if we can get machines. Going back to one of the biggest problems that we're facing is Mexico is subsidizing. If you're a grower in Mexico and say, I want to put blueberries in, the Mexican government will pay for anywhere between 50 and 75% of your infrastructure costs to put a farm in. That's another way where we.
There's a problem.
Hard to compete.
75, yeah.
How are you going to compete?
So that's like your buildings, your tractors, everything.
Your irrigation,
Which is, that's
your car, hoop houses. I believe in irrigation and hoop houses, which is the biggest infrastructure cost because they have to grow.
Now, the one advantage that we can have is that Mexico, they are under hoop houses and they can't machine harvest. So the fact that we can machine harvest does give us.
But their labor is so cheap that they don't need to machine harvest.
Hold on, do say it one more time. Why can't they machine harvest?
They've got hoop houses. Yeah.
One is they're closer to the equator, so their crop is much more spread out. Or we try to condense our crop for machine harvest so you can get it so you don't knock a lot.
So you have a 2 to 3 week peak in your yield versus there with theirs got a little bit all for a long time. So if you ran a machine through there, it would be tough because you want a lot of berries on there to machine harvest.
Yeah, because you'll knock off some green berries.
And then secondly, they're growing under protected structure because of their heat that they deal with. So it's
machines
so you cannot drive machines.
You will definitely be way before them to the machine harvest.
Yeah. Well, we are machine harvesting quite a bit.
But at full commercial, fresh market capacity.
Yeah, we are.
Look at me learning my blueberries.
We're getting there.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Well, I know this is our cutoff time. This is really good. We could get a lot deeper. We go for another hour here, but we'll cut it now unless there's anything else you guys want to say for this episode, because I will be back to Southern Hill Farms. I can tell you that now. I just want to point out, too, that Kyle took his jacket off and he's kind of jacked, okay?
So it's really, make sure you get that close up.
He was scaring me a little bit when he was moving around.